Good afternoon. It's Monday. I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to the Sal Greco Show. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're watching us on Rumble, please hit the like button, hit the Rumble button, hit the follow button. And if you're listening on any major podcast streaming platforms, please like, share, and subscribe. Today, and actually in the next episode as well, we're going to do a two-part series here. And we're going to do a deep dive into the entire Eric Adams fiasco and how this connects back to not only his underlings in the NYPD, quite possibly as high up as the governor's office. And in all honesty, it looks like there's a real estate racket behind a lot of what's going on. And coming on to break this all down with me will be a member of the finest Unfiltered family, and that's a former detective, Marlon Bethel. He's a very smart guy, very analytical, but he has a lot of interesting points to make here. So without any further ado, let's get right to it. A special two-part series here, like I said, and on to break all this down, which is going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of information here. Is going to be my brother from the finest Unfiltered family, Marlon Bethel. Marlon, welcome back to the show. How have you been, brother?
Thank you for having me back here, Sal. It's good to be on again, and it's good to talk to you again, audience.
Yeah, so here's the deal. We always talk behind the scenes or off camera here. And Marlon has come up with a theory, and the theory is based on evidence and facts of the case. And there's plenty of cases here. Like I said, I've been stating on the show about Eric Adams, his underlings, back to the governor, back to the police department. It's like a web, and you really need to break this down, and it's going to take a while, but we're going to try to do this as best as we can in two parts. So the first thing I want to present to everyone here, and Marlon will comment on this later, was, of course, Eric Adams' trial. Allegedly, his federal case is about to be dismissed by the Department of Justice because Deputy Attorney General M.O. Bove stated that this case needs to be dismissed on political grounds. There's no grounds on merit to dismiss this case. And, of course, he's a stooge installed by Boris Epstein, and I really want the audience, Google that man. You will see a lot of stuff with him. We'll get to him later on. But Emo Bove put this in, and so they had a hearing because the judge in the case, Judge Dale Ho, wanted to hear all the facts and to the reason of why this case should be dismissed. And he brought all the parties in. So this was a little excerpt that happened in an exchange that happened between the judge, the attorney that was there, I think Bove was there, and Alex Spiro was there also. So they had this little exchange, and it's very important to remember all of this. So this was from the day of the hearing. And I wrote, "You clearly are not reading any legal document or searching for facts. Here is just one exchange from the hearing yesterday that points exactly to what I am saying. You can help yourself by doing research. It's as easy as typing in a name, then reading, then a light bulb appears." And this is, I'm responding to someone who doesn't understand what's going on. So here, this is from any Inner City Press, at Inner City Press, who's covering this. And this is the exchange. Bove, he does not have security clearance now. Judge Ho, Mr. Spiro, did he have it before? Spiro, yes, he was part of the joint task force. He can't interact with those who brought this case. Judge Ho, but did the case make him lose the clearance? Spiro, he's not getting info from terrorist threats. Bove, I don't concede that the security clearance is tried to this motion. It is a matter of executive power. Judge Ho, how fast could it be restored? Bove, I don't know. Judge Ho, has this rationale been invoked before in a decision to dismiss an indictment? Both. I'm not aware of such a case, but there are other cases where SDNY has invoked national security, like the Victor Bout case and U.S. versus Galdauzi. Marlon, what did you take on seeing something like that? Because now we're learning what technically myself, John, Eric, you stated from the first minute we heard about this indictment. We had stated Eric Adams lost the security clearance and his police commissioner and his deputy commissioners and everyone underneath him that were raided or part of investigation had their phone taken also lost the security clearances. But we got laughed at for that because we have an axe to grind, apparently. So, Marlon, what do you got to say about that one part now being proven true?
Yeah, well, Sal, the finest Unfiltered family, you, John, Eric, myself, we've been ahead of the curve on a lot of this, and it just goes to show you that the law information public out there, they can deny it all they want, but in the end, it all comes out eventually, and this is, this is just, I mentioned on Fridays on Finest, Finest Unfiltered episode that we're all being groomed to normalize certain things that never happened in the past. And one of those things is having a mayor that doesn't have access to intelligence regarding terrorist threats to New York City. Now, this is unprecedented because, 9/11 was more than 20 years ago now. So a lot of the younger people tend to forget. But, New York City is still the number one terrorist target in the West. And as I noted on Friday as well, New York City has one of the largest Jewish populations in the world. And there was a recent incident 2 days ago in Israel where there was 3 unoccupied buses that had explosive devices on them that were detonated. So when you think about that now, and New York City is a big terrorist target, why would you want a leader not having access to that information when that leader has to make critical decisions at a moment's notice? Eric Adams, this is an untenable situation, and it's all the more reason why Eric Adams has to go.
I think it's actually a dangerous situation. 8 million people right now, for the last 6 months at least now, have had their leaders not be able to inform them of the truth. We don't even know who exactly gets these briefings. Well, I'm going to play a video in regards to that one. I mean, Eric blurts out a name, but this is pretty troubling. But to go back to the case, the judge then made a ruling. He had an order the other day when they had a hearing. And after the hearing, he came up with his own order. So let me put this up on the screen. And here it is, Eric Adams criminal case update. And I have the document here, and you could see this is an order from the judge. You can see it's a 5-page order that I tried to make into 5, but you could go and look at it if you want. Judge Ho has appointed Paul Clement as an amicus curiae rather than a special prosecutor. They function in a similar capacity. Clement has until March 7th to brief the issue from the former prosecutor's perspective. Interested amici must file applications with their proposed briefs by February 28th. Judge Ho has solicited amicus briefs because the application for dismissal has gone unopposed by both parties. He has adjourned all pretrial and trial deadlines until disposition of the application. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Hashtag the finest unfiltered. So, in other words here, Marlon, he's appointed the equivalent of what would be a special prosecutor. It's the same kind of role. It's dragging their feet, so to speak. It's kind of like political theater. But remember, it is Trump's Justice Department that turned this into political theater. It wasn't the other way around. The judge has the right to do this because, again, we don't have a reason. We don't have grounds or merit to say this case should be dismissed. Because remember, Bove is saying that it's going to hinder his running the city. So never in the history of any court decision ever, I believe, or any court case, have we heard, we need to dismiss your case because it's going to interfere with your job. Meaning your indictment or your legal situation interferes with you, going to work. I mean, that could be virtually anyone else. And I think this is a very dangerous precedent as well. But what is your thoughts on this special prosecutor? I feel it's just political theater, but also at the same time, it's their right to do this, since it's completely being done almost illegally, but definitely, I wouldn't say illegal technically, but it's unethical.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense, Al. It doesn't make sense because, that thinking, goes against the Eric Adams' lack of security clearance right now. So how can he do his job without a security clearance right now? I mean, regardless of what the DOJ is currently doing with his case, it still stands that Eric doesn't have security clearance, And when you dig into those funds, those campaign funds and straw donors that come into him, you start wondering, is this guy, the influence of foreign powers on this guy, is that the reason for his lack of security clearance? So, the DOJ's reasoning right now doesn't make sense. It flies completely in the face of logic. And as Jason from Crowdsource the Truth has said before, he said something that I've been thinking about lately. He said that he believes Trump has fallen into a lawfare trap again, similar to Trump 1.0, when the lawfare trap was with General Flynn. To me, when I started thinking about it, I was like, wait a second, you know what? This could very well be another trap, because we know that when the midterms come around, if this keeps going on, the Democrats will 100% use it against Trump. So, like I said, and like you've been saying all along, that this is just a bad move, and it just flies in the face of logic,
Yeah, and but there's a lot more to this, and I do agree. I like Jason's point. It is kind of like lawfare, but unlike the General Mike Flynn case, technically here, they are right. They're right that this case has no merit to be dismissed. It's being handled wrong. If it is lawfare or a setup, it would actually come from Trump's Justice Department, the people running it, not the other side. They caused this problem. So like I keep mentioning Boris Epstein, is this guy a controlled opposition? I mean, we're going to go down conspiratorial avenues, and I'm not one to really do that, but you can beg the question, is Boris Epstein a foreign asset or an asset? Because he's the guy that put this email Bove first on the defense team when President Trump had his criminal case, when he had Joe Tacopina as his criminal defense attorney. And if you remember, Joe Tacopina left in the middle or right after the one of the civil cases because he had a disagreement upon things and left, saying we don't have the same we'll say look on the case, and he didn't want to get too much into it. But Joe Tacopina the other day got an acquittal in Los Angeles on ASAP Rocky's case. The guy's facing 25 years for a serious gun charge, attempted murder. He's able to get a not guilty, an acquittal in a liberal California jurisdiction. If you're going to start with that low information talking point, a Democrat, Republican, and all that other stuff. But what? He couldn't get that in New York City? No, Boris, he put email Bove there. Remember, Boris is in charge of the Trump legal counsel. He's a man that doesn't have any legal experience in a courtroom. He never tried a case. A traffic attorney has more experience. It really begs to wonder what the hell is going on there. But now going back to this whole situation with Eric Adams, I want to play the video of Eric Adams in an interview just the other day explaining this whole security clearance thing, and it's just alarming. So here I posted this. New York City Mayor Eric Adams admitted to @Morgan F. McKay that he does not receive security briefings from the federal government, including possible threats to New York City. The police commissioner and deputy commissioner do now and have. But Eric was cut off starting when he was indicted in September, when Eddie Caban, who was NYPD police commissioner, stepped down himself under investigation, and then Tom Donlin, raided immediately by the FBI upon taking the job after Caban, were NYPD police commissioners. They, too, could not receive security briefings either, due to being under federal investigation, and certain deputy commissioners and chiefs were also in the same boat, just like myself and the finest Unfiltered exclusively reported first months ago. 8 million people's lives have been at risk for months, and New York Governor Kathy Hochul knew this and did nothing to remove this corrupt man as mayor. She instead was worried about the Buffalo Bills Stadium and congestion pricing, and only now, for all the wrong reasons, is taking action. She must be impeached as governor for her incompetence of playing politics and endangering the lives of her own voters in New York City. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Hashtag the finest Unfiltered. So let's just watch this, and I'll get your take after.
Just got the information, and they're going to look over it.
But this now delays a decision in your case, and your attorney said that you haven't been receiving security briefings since your security clearance was revoked, and you haven't even been receiving terrorism threats, which seems like a big part of your job. And you said you've been able to do your job without any sort of interruption.
Well, justice delayed is not justice denied.
Have you not been getting security briefings?
We still have in place the police commissioner and the deputy commissioner, Weiner, who's deputy commissioner of intelligence. And so they do not brief me on those high level briefings. And we're going to respect the authorization you need to get those briefings. But we've been doing the job as need be.
Marlon, what is your thoughts hearing that this is 100% confirmed, and the fact that Kathy Hochul knew this and just sat there and did nothing? She thinks it's fine that 8 million citizens in her state have leaders that are not allowed to get briefings. We don't even know who really did, because remember, he said a police commissioner, but remember what we just stated there. Eddie Caban and Tom Donlin, one resigned and one was raided. Both were raided, but Tom Donlin was raided a week into his reign as police commissioner. So again, that upsets the apple cart. Who's getting briefed? We warned everyone. They didn't want to touch that. They don't even broach that subject. But now, how does Kathy Hochul justify her inactions? I think she should be removed and impeached immediately.
Yeah. Well, Sal, if I may, to my last point, when I said this was a lawfare trap, it is not in the way the low information sycophants want to jump on it. They want to jump on it and say this is all because of politics. And Eric Adams mentioned about immigrants. He mentioned about he started talking about immigration. Even they want to completely ignore the fact that Eric Adams' administration now is trying to claw back $80 million from migrant shelters. It's a lawfare trap in that Trump is now supporting a guy who is systematically corrupt. Trump waded into a swamp that can easily pull him further down and kind of jeopardize his agenda. And that is where the trap is. The trap is having Trump defend a guy who's systematically corrupt, unpopular, and can't even accomplish the basic job of protecting New York City as the city's chief executive. So this situation in New York City is a mess. I've used the word kakistocracy a lot, or rather it's colloquial version, which is an idiocracy. Okay, that's a government run by the most inept, incompetent people. I've used it to describe New York a lot because the more I look at things around New York State, the more I realize, the people that are in charge of government they're not competent. Look at Hochul, who should have removed Eric Adams months ago. Okay, months ago. You can't have a properly functioning New York City with a guy whose administration, there's a new scandal every day in this administration, yeah? New scandal every day. Now we know for a fact that he doesn't have the security clearance. We don't even know. This brings into question who exactly is even running New York City and who exactly is even running the police department. Because we know that behind the scenes, Phil Banks is still there. We know that a lot of policies that Tish wants to enact, she really has to get permission from Eric Adams. You know, she still can't completely clear the deck of all the cronies left over from Phil Banks. So you know, New York State is a mess right now, and I say that Hochul begrudgingly, she doesn't want to remove Adams partly because of the mess that New York City is in. Because, like I said before, if she removes Adams, then she has to a lot of that responsibility falls on her plate. And this is you know, we don't know the full scope of the problems in New York City. And I've said before many times that a lot of those problems relate to New York City's finances. When the full scope of those problems comes out, somebody's going to have to take the hit. Now, Adams being there still becomes a convenient scapegoat for Hochul, as opposed to if she removed him, now it falls on the people are going to be like, well, you got rid of Adams, so now it's your bag, so to speak, you know. But again, New York City's a mess. New York State's a mess, and the longer it goes on, the more deeper this quicksand is.
Listen, I wholeheartedly agree with your statement, but I see this as Hochul. I don't know how you can justify her remaining governor with this incompetence, because she's been clearly busy currying favor for the Buffalo Bills, and I guess they gave her like the blueprints for a new stadium that she's trying to get this through, and the congestion pricing, which she's mad that Trump cut off the federal part of that, and she was mad about that. But she's not mad that she left an incompetent, corrupt individual as mayor who cannot receive security clearances, and neither can his underlings. I mean, we go back, Kaz Dodry, John Shell, all these people have been involved in federal investigations, Department of investigations, had their phones taken. The list could go on and on. Who is getting these briefings? That's scary. He says Wiener's a teacher, I believe, at NYU or on the board or something there. I mean, this is just wild, and I can't believe the incompetence. But there's even more incompetence, because you mentioned Friday, right? So Friday, there was something else that happened. There's a couple of things that happened, but I'm going to show you the first one because this is unbelievable. We found out the Luigi Mangione's case. It says right here, Luigi Mangione's lawyer says Mayor Adams publicly discussed evidence defense had not seen. Mayor Adams and an NYPD official discussed the case with HBO for a documentary. In her remarks to the judge, Luigi Mangione's lawyer, Karen Agnifilio, said she was shocked that the NYPD chief of detectives, that's Chief Kenny, and Mayor Adams were able to sit down with HBO and discuss evidence and their theories of the case for a documentary. The prosecutors have yet to turn over key evidence, including a journal that alleged in his manifesto that Adams at the NYPD official on HBO, Agnifilio said. And I posted this on X, and here's what I said about it. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has significantly affected the Luigi Mangione case that now merits a change of venue or a mistrial because of him and his NYPD executive's big mouth. Eric, former NYPD cop, should know no discussing details of a criminal case until after a conviction. But then again, Eric was never a real cop. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Hashtag the finest unfiltered. Now I'll say this. The mistrial part, that was a little leading. In that part, you could say, I misspoke. It can't be a mistrial because the trial hasn't even started yet. It hasn't been convened. But a change of venue can happen. Also, I believe it's a request to have the case dismissed because of obviously prejudice. And I think, Marlon, what Eric Adams, his lawyer, Alex Spiro, is screaming about and why they're trying to dismiss his own case, saying, well, there was an op-ed written by the former prosecutor, Damian Williams, that has nothing to do with him. But he said that there was, they're trying to taint the jury pool. How does this not taint the jury pool in a major case? It's unbelievable, Marlon.
Yeah, it's completely inept, but it's part of course for Eric Adams, a guy who has less than I believe less than 20 arrests to his name, to his 20-year career, and doesn't know the basics, So this shouldn't surprise us, Immediately as soon as Adams became mayor, this was a guy who was going out and partying every night, okay? A guy not concerned with actually doing the duties of mayor, but a guy who's more concerned with the prestige and the fame and the media attention that comes with being mayor. So this really shouldn't surprise us at all,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know what, Sal? If I could also,
I think this is egregious.
Yeah. It's absolutely egregious. This again, this goes back to the incompetence of the people who run New York City and New York State. And if I may, to my last point about Kathy Hochul, you want to know something interesting about Kathy Hochul, right? There's a lot going on in Buffalo, New York right now, right? A couple of weeks ago, Kathy Hochul had an interview with Hillary Clinton. And the interview was again, you got two of the worst people that have ever been in government talking. And I was like, 30 minutes in, I was like, oh man, this is a terrible interview. But it got very interesting, especially when Kathy started talking about Buffalo. And you could actually see like her eyes lit up, right? Because Buffalo is getting a lot of development right now, a lot of development and a lot of business. And Kathy even spoke about pushing people to go live in Buffalo, getting people up there and getting businesses up there. So it's very interesting when you consider what's happening in New York City and why she wants Adams there. I don't want to be conspiratorial, but I see so much going on in Buffalo that it's like, it seems to me like it's in her interest and the interest of her campaign financiers to keep Buffalo being pushed and being built up. So.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what her comments were. The fact that not only Luigi Mangione's case is being tainted by not only the chief of detectives, not only Eric Adams, but the fact that he had 30 people at his original arraignment and he wasn't even shackled, where two cops could have done that like they've done for decades. Probably, I think, more like a century, where two cops would pick up a defendant in another state and transport him back to New York City. But apparently 30 people had to do this. It was a huge waste of resources. And I don't know how you don't see that as trying to taint the jury pool. Look, you can say what you want about, the Luigi Mangione, if he's guilty, he's not guilty. Everyone has rights in this country. Much like the O.J. Simpson trial, if you remember how that went, the reason he was acquitted was they messed up in a chain of custody, the police department. There's a couple other factors contributing, but that was the main point. So we want to convict people doing things the right way if you're going to do that. This is absurd. I would say this guy should be acquitted just because of what's going on here. And I don't know what the end game is with this, but this one that happened on Friday, to find out that they're doing a documentary, again, this whole perception management, self-impressed people. Again, what is it doing? It's good to try to hook in low information people. They're trying to get you to think Eric Adams was always a cop and he's a good guy and he's tough on crime. I don't see it that way. I think he's a buffoon who, I don't know what he's still doing there. But apparently Eric Adams, he can't be prosecuted, nor can he be removed. He's actually reached a rank no one even has. He's higher than the president. He's untouchable. We don't know why. But I think you're alluding to something because you mentioned real estate. Real estate in Buffalo. And now we're talking about real estate in New York. And here's an article that happened, again, it was on Friday. It's in the city.nyc. It's by Greg B. Smith, the Dean of Journalism. Indicted Eric Adams fundraiser and possible plea discussions with feds. hotel developer Wei Hong Hu could be an explosive witness against the embattled mayor. A fundraiser for Mayor Eric Adams charging a kickback scheme involving city contracts obtained a delay in the case in preparation for possible plea negotiations with prosecutors in the Brooklyn U.S. Attorney's Office, a court filing shows. Wei Hong Hu was indicted last week in a public corruption scheme accused of bribing the founder of a nonprofit group, Exodus Transitional Community, that released inmates in her hotels during the pandemic with rooms paid for with government funds. She and a co-conspirator, Christopher Dantzler, owner of an unlicensed security firm handling security at the hotels, paid Exodus CEO Julio Medina $2.5 million in bribes in exchange for $51 million in contracts, prosecutors alleged. Several hours after Hu appeared in Brooklyn federal court on February 13th to plead not guilty, Brooklyn U.S. Attorney John Durham's office filed papers requesting the clock be paused leading up to trial, citing plea negotiations. The document signed by Magistrate Judge James Cho also cited discovery, obtaining the evidence prosecutors have amassed in the case as a reason the U.S. Attorney and Hu's counsel, led by defense lawyer Benjamin Brofman, agreed to hit pause. Cho specifically noted that the time exclusion was approved given the reasonable likelihood that ongoing plea negotiations will result in a disposition of this case without trial. Both Medina and Dantzler also requested time excluded for the same reasons, referencing plea negotiations and discovery. Contacted by the city, Brafman, who has described his client as a victim and not a co-conspirator, stated, "There are no plea negotiations," and declined to comment on the document filed in court, signed by both sides and approved by the judge that specifically referenced plea negotiations. Hu's involvement in possibly illegal acts that implicate Adams' political campaigns and his administration extend far beyond Exodus, as revealed by the city in a series of investigative reports. If she were to fully cooperate with prosecutors, she could be an explosive witness against the embattled mayor. Hu hosted two fundraisers for Adams' 2021 campaign at her Fresh Meadows Hotel, the location where the City Department of Investigations joined the FBI to execute search warrants last year. In June 2023, Hu threw a fundraiser for Adams' re-election bid, raising $44,000 at a luxury building in Hudson Yards, where she had recently purchased an apartment for $5 million in cash. Two donors told the city that $2,000 contributions were reimbursed by members of Hu's family, making them straw donations forbidden under the city's campaign finance program. And in 2022, another associate of Adams, Reverend Al Cockfield II, made a call to the Department of Buildings after inspectors paused a midtown development project owned by Hu, citing a construction safety violation. The stop work order was promptly rescinded, the city reported. Cockfield was also part of the intervention to allow construction to proceed with another Hu Manhattan hotel project, despite her failure to replace affordable housing as required. Federal and city investigators raided Cockfield's home the same day they visited Hu's Fresh Meadows Hotel, and sources told the city the probe involves her fundraising for Adams and Cockfield's work on her behalf. Hu also has ties to Adams' top Asian community advisor and fundraiser, Winnie Greco, who stayed at the Fresh Meadows Hotel for months in a room that was part of the Exodus shelter program, the city found in its investigation. Greco has never provided evidence she paid. Greco's two Bronx properties and a Queens mall that was another hub of Adams' campaign activity were both raided by the feds a year ago. Greco resigned in October. Last week, the Trump Justice Department initially blocked further investigative steps regarding Adams in ordering Manhattan federal prosecutors to dismiss their case against the mayor. But in court on Wednesday, acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove backed away from that position, saying there are now no restrictions on subsequent inquiries about that involve Adams. The Exodus saga began in April 2020 at the start of the pandemic, when Exodus was awarded an $835,000 no-bid contract from the de Blasio administration to house inmates released from Rikers and upstate prisons. That contract would ultimately balloon to more than $122 million. The city first raised questions about the hotel program in 2022, discovering that a firm they'd hired to provide security at Hu's Hotel in Fresh Meadows did not have a license. The city later discovered millions of dollars were funneled into another unlicensed security firm controlled by Dantzler that the city was unaware of. Prosecutors allege that Hu and Dantzler made $2.5 million in secret payments to Medina, including financing a $107,000 luxury vehicle for him, buying him a $1.3 million townhouse in Washington Heights, and a $750,000 home upstate, handing over envelopes of cash and helping him pay his mortgage. In exchange, companies controlled by Hugh and Dantzler reaped millions of dollars in subcontracts from Exodus for security and catering services. The hotel and a construction firm she rebranded as a caterer, providing food to the released inmates, pocketed $31 million. Dantzler received another $21 million, of which $12 million went to actual licensed security firms, while he pocketed the remaining $9 million, the indictment alleges. Taxpayers ultimately paid for all the bribes, which were covered up with inflated invoices submitted to Exodus, prosecutors say. Marlon, you're talking about the real estate racket going on here in New York City and Buffalo. And this woman is involved in multiple scandals here and also is a big backer of Eric Adams. I remember the video that she had of holding this fundraiser for Eric. It's still on YouTube where they're having caviar. She can't even do this because she already max contributed. I mean, what's going on? Because I tell you this, Marlon, I heard from a very good source, somebody that's very hooked in with the Eastern District of New York, that the Trump Justice Department, more than likely Mr. Emil Bove or somebody there, are making moves behind the scenes to try to get this entire case dismissed because it's, again, Eric Adams is the focal point. So just so people know out there, if you start becoming enraged, the Trump Justice Department is yet again trying to cancel out this case because, of course, Eric Adams would be indicted more than likely in Brooklyn for this whole fiasco. So let's get your take on this, Marlon.
Yeah. So remember, I just spoke about real estate in Buffalo and how Kathy Hochul's face lit up when she was talking about the building that's happening in Buffalo. You have to understand that real estate is massive in the city, massive. The commercial property taxes is almost 50% of the tax revenue that New York City needs for its budget. So think of it, all the services that the city provides, policing, sanitation, EMS, fire department, where's that money coming from? The majority of it is coming from commercial property taxes. So commercial properties have an outsized influence over government because the revenue that comes from their taxes takes up such a oversized portion of the city's overall tax revenue. And that relates again to the city's budget. We can't have a lot of our city services without that money. So with that said, if you've been paying attention for well over a year now, you've noticed that so much of the fraud and corruption against Eric Adams circles around. We keep coming back to real estate, you know? You go back a couple of years in the mid-teens, 20 teens, when Phil Banks was nearly indicted, you know? What was the dynamic in there? It was real estate developers. It always goes back to real estate developers because of that huge influence of real estate. Now, to understand where that huge influence of real estate comes from, we need to understand like the dynamics of what America produces, right? Years ago, America offshored our jobs to China. When we offshored our manufacturing, we essentially disconnected manufacturing from real estate because, you know, real estate used to be built next to manufacturing, right? As a house, as shelter, you know, and not necessarily a real estate investment. But what happened when America got off the gold standard, we essentially moved the monetary system to one of being dependent on debt, you know, where we package our debt as treasuries and then we sell it to the world as an asset. And why does the world use it as an asset? Well, because in countries like China, where as mentioned here, where Winnie Greco has been alleged to be an agent of China, you know, and you see the other foreign influence in the other campaign fraud allegations against Eric Adams. We have the gentleman from Turkey, Arkan, who's already pled guilty. We have the other incident involving the developer with ties to Uzbekistan. Right? There's a lot of foreign money that uses New York State and New York State real estate as an investment vehicle. Why do they do that? Well, because since America left the gold standard, our dollars became the world's reserve currency, right? And as a byproduct of that, those other currencies inflate against our currency. So if you're a billionaire or millionaire in Uzbekistan or China, you need a savings instrument, right? And what happens is you look for US denominated instruments, US denominated assets that you could put your money into that can fight inflation. Because if you left it in, say, your Uzbeki dollars, which say one Uzbeki dollars equals 0.00007 US dollars. So again, you're going to lose money. You're going to lose money if you leave it in Uzbeki dollars. Same thing for China, right? A lot of the Chinese currency is strong, but it's not as strong as the dollar. The dollar is a wrecking ball for the world. So a lot of these foreign investors look for assets, in particular real estate, to put their money in. So New York State and New York City in particular becomes luxury real estate, becomes an investment vehicle where they put their money in these expensive apartments that they never actually live in, right? They just put it in there. It appreciates, and then they sell it to some other guy eventually. And they use the proceeds to then move into other assets. But a lot of times that money comes to America first through real estate. So you see, a lot of all these cases of campaign fraud against Adams, they keep coming back to luxury real estate, and it's not.
Yeah.
What's surprising is that. No, I'm sorry. What's surprising is the continual move by DOJ to drop this, because again, this is a bad look. It's a bad look for Trump, and it's something that could railroad his agenda. It's a deep swamp, and the further he wades into it, is the more you can pull him back down. And he needs to jettison this case and stay out of it, and let justice proceed, and let justice clear out the swamp that is New York State real estate, so we can get back to a better New York State, and Trump can focus on the American agenda, which is going back to a pre-gold, to a pre-1970s, getting off the gold standard. We need to go back to manufacturing in America. That's his agenda, and he needs to focus on that and get out of this swamp.
Yeah. You said a lot there. I think there's a lot, and nobody, I think people know about this, but they don't want to focus on it. And the real estate, yet again, you read this woman who has Benjamin Brafman, also Phil Banks' lawyer, and she has ties to all these things. And again, I keep bringing up, is Eric Adams a foreign asset, or is he an asset in general for the government? I mean, he can't be prosecuted, can't be removed, but yet he has ties to all these different things, and he's untouchable, it appears. Because if you or I or anyone else that's watching this show right now or listening to it does anything in the neighborhood of what Eric Adams is involved in, you're going to jail, and your trial will be like a big spectacle. Is it? Because it's just, there's arbitrary treatment going on, and I still can't wrap my head around it. When I read this, and the fact that this source said that the Trump Justice Department is trying to kick this down the road or do the same thing or get rid of the case altogether, that's troubling. And again, remember the name Boris Epstein and his email Bove character. Because I don't know where these guys butt their heads in. They're not even, you want to play the political game. Remember, she was being investigated in 2020. So this is long before Joe Biden, all this other stuff happened. And then Eric Adams' original case from the Southern District of New York started in 2017 under Trump's original Justice Department. So these political low information hook lines that he's a victim, political persecution, is a ruse. He's just trying to dig into the low information people because it's perception management. They're trying to spin the narrative. I just want to inform people with that. But you mentioned one other thing, this Uzbekistan guy. So there's a whole thing with that. And I'm going to put that on the screen. This is from the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Okay, this is a I mean, you would say, where does a publication like this come from? But this is where these hidden gems come. This is by Thomas Rowley. One of New York City Mayor Eric Adams' alleged straw donors linked to energy mogul with high-level Russia ties. A New York developer who donated to Adams' campaign operates a real estate empire that documents show is majority owned by a Cyprus-registered company linked to Uzbek tycoon Bakhtur Fazilov. I hope I got that name right. I don't want to butcher that. And here he is, picture with Eric Adams right there. Tolab Mansurov, an alleged straw donor, pours tea for Mayor Adams at a roundtable the mayor hosted with the Silk Road Foundation's Uzbek community leaders on Monday, July 17, 2023. A New York luxury landlord named among the alleged straw donors is the criminal case against Mayor Eric Adams as ties to the Uzbek owner of a billion-dollar energy company once co-owned by a Kremlin-run bank. The alleged straw donor was named by New York media as Tolib Mansurov, an Uzbek national prominent in the city's Central Asian community, who appears as the only public director and shareholder of two New York State registered companies that own millions of dollars of Brooklyn real estate. In fact, a new investigation reveals Mansurov's property firms were, until 2020, majority owned by a Cyprus-registered company with close links to Uzbek energy and construction tycoon Bakhtur Fazilov, who has in the past had extensive business dealings with powerful Russian interests. Last week, President Trump's Justice Department instructed federal prosecutors to dismiss all charges against Adams, prompting the high-profile resignations of the acting U.S. Attorney in Manhattan and top Justice Department officials in Washington. On February 17th, four of Adams' deputy mayors resigned, and New York Governor Kathy Hochul said she was considering whether to remove Adams from office. The order was the latest in a series of bombshells rocking New York City politics since a federal grand jury in September indicted the mayor on criminal charges of bribery, conspiracy, and soliciting campaign contributions from straw donors, individuals who make illegal political donations on behalf of foreigners or others seeking to hide their identity and exceed donation limits. While the alleged straw donors in the Adams case were not named, New York news organizations have identified several, including Mansurov, a longtime U.S. resident whose developments dot Brooklyn's gentrifying areas such as the Crown Heights neighborhood and 4th Avenue. But an investigation by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty's Uzbek Service, and Uz Investigations has found that Mansurov's property business is 51% owned by a Cyprus-registered company, Saltamo Limited, which is owned by the head of a Cyprus offshore services firm that provides so-called nominees or stand-ins to mask the identities of the true owners. A company owned by the same natural person as Saltamo pledged securities to a bank in order to allow Saltamo to take out millions of dollars in loans. The pledging company, Erelico, is 100% owned by Fazilov. A spokesperson for Fazilov told ICIJ that he had no personal involvement in any of the matters you raised. In an email to ICIJ, Mansurov said that he had no business dealings with Fazilov. Fazilov, 49, is chairman and sole owner of Iriel Group, a giant Uzbek energy company formerly based in Moscow that since 2017 has won billions of dollars in state contracts for Uzbekistan's mammoth natural gas sector. His construction company, Enter Engineering, has erected hundreds of millions of dollars worth of gas, oil, and other industrial infrastructure, as well as new tourism sites and an ice hockey arena for Tashkent, the Uzbek capital. Both Iriel and Enter Engineering have been financed over the past 15 years by Gazprom Bank, whose ownership and management structure have attracted scrutiny for ties to key allies of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Gazprom Bank is the financial arm of the majority Russian state-owned energy giant Gazprom. Prior to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Iriel Group counted Gazprom Bank as a 25% shareholder. Another former shareholder in Iriel, which has since divested, is a former executive of a company owned by billionaire Gennady Timchenko, considered one of Putin's closest oligarch allies. Both Gazprom Bank and Timchenko have been placed under Western sanctions since 2022. Fazilov has previously denied any dealings with Timchenko. The Iriel Group underwent restructuring in 2022 in response to the war in Ukraine. As such, any references to past relationships are misleading and amount to a cynical attempt to introduce a Russia angle into your story. This appears to be a deliberate attempt to manufacture public interest, which, where none exist, a spokesperson for Fazilov told ICIJ. Further, Fazilov counts family members of two former high-ranking personnel in Uzbekistan's notorious security services among his business partners in Russian property and agriculture firms. One of them, Sharif Ayatov, is the son of ex-security service chief Rustam Inuyatov, who is widely regarded as one of Uzbekistan's great cardinals, the shadowy security service players who run the Central Asian country's economic and political life, and who is reported to be close to the Kremlin. Manzurov's ties to Fazilov's firms and other powerful Uzbek interests, which in turn are tied to powerful Russian interests, provide new insight into the overseas business connections of one of the alleged straw donors to Adams' 2021 campaign. All of Mr. Fazilov's personal and group transactions are conducted to the highest international standards. This means they are reviewed by international banks and lawyers. Any attempt to portray Mr. Fazilov's interest in a negative light would therefore be defamatory, a spokesperson told ICIJ. Silk Road. Originally from Samarkand, a city along the ancient Silk Road trade route, Mansurov founded his New York luxury renovation company, United Elite Group LLC, in 2012 and his real estate holding Global Industries LLC in 2015. That same year, a Cyprus-registered company, Saltamo Limited, recorded a 51% interest in Mansurov's Global Industries and lent the New York company $400,000. Saltamo had close ties to Fazilov, then a fast-rising energy tycoon. The beneficial owner of Saltamo was a Belize-registered firm that had previously held shares in Iriel, the international energy giant partly owned by Fazilov. In 2015, Fazilov's Iriel was 39% owned by Gazprom Bank and worked on drilling contracts for Lukoil, the giant Russian oil company in Iraq, Uzbekistan, and the Arctic, along with Gazprom, the state majority-owned energy giant. The prospects of both Enter Engineering and Iriel soared after strongman Shavlat Mirziyoyev was elected Uzbekistan's president in the late 2016. Fazilov has become one of the most successful businessmen of Mirziyoyev's new Uzbekistan agenda, which has sought expanded a diplomatic relationship and a modern liberalized economy. Between 2017 and 2022, Iriel says it received a $2.3 billion in state contracts as part of Mirziyov's drive to unlock Uzbekistan's natural gas wealth, building hundreds of kilometers of gas pipeline and drilling hundreds of wells. It did so under a joint venture with Uzbek state gas company Uzbekneftgaz and Russia's Gazprom. A loan document filed with the Cyprus authorities in 2019 shows that a Cyprus company owned by Fazilov, Irilico Limited, pledged its accounts to Credit Suisse in order to secure a loan facility for Saltamo. Both the customer, Saltamo, and the assigner, Irilico, belonged to the same natural person, the document reads, suggesting that Fazilov was the owner of the Belize company that ultimately owned Saltamo. Fazilov did not respond to a question about whether he was the beneficial owner of Saltamo. According to a year-end 2020 financial statement, Saltamo had drawn nearly $21 million in loans from Credit Suisse, which was secured by a pledge on securities of a related company held with the lending bank. Around the same time, the Fazilov linked Saltamo loan funds to Mansurov's New York's real estate firm, Global Industries, according to financial records reviewed by ICIJ. Neither Fazilov nor Mansurov answered ICIJ's question about whether the funds loaned by Credit Suisse had been used to purchase New York real estate. Mansurov told ICIJ that all his transactions have been conducted through respected lawyers in the United States and regulated financial institutions. The deals have been thoroughly vetted, and therefore any suggestion that our activities have been illegitimate would be deeply defamatory. Saltamo later reported that during 2019, its beneficial owner had switched the Belize company that transferred shares in Saltamo to the owner of the Cyprus corporate service provider, which acts as a secretary to Saltamo, Behudir Gafurov. According to a review of corporate filings by ICIJ, Gafurov's company, Epimena Corporate, currently acts as a secretary to 16 Cyprus-registered companies where Fazilov is a beneficial owner. Epimena did not respond to requests for comment. Gafarov has previously served as a director at Iriel and in 2022 was reported as the co-founder, 4.5% together with Fazilov, 51% of a new Uzbek airline, Sam Air. Gafarov is also first vice president of the Hockey Federation of Uzbekistan, with Fazilov as a president. Gafarov is listed as a co-owner of a Russian feed plant alongside Fazilov and Sharif Ainuyatov. Manzarov told ICIJ that Gafarov was his business partner who had invested via his Cyprus company. He did not say who owned the remaining 4.5% of Global Industries. I do work closely with Mr. Fazilov, but the New York property investments you are referring to do not involve him at all. Gafarov told ICIJ in an email after publication. In 2020, Global Industries purchased a $13.2 million apartment block in Brooklyn's Park Slope neighborhood, as well as an $8 million site just east of Prospect Park. In May 2024 filing, Fazilov's Relico reported that its pledge of accounts to secure Saltamo's loan facility had been transferred to UBS after the latter's acquisition of Credit Suisse, showing that Fazilov's company was still providing security for the loans of the company that 51% owns Manzarov's New York firm. The Justice Department's indictment alleges that Adam Stafford took 10,000 in straw donations from employers of Manzarov on behalf of the developer referred to as Businessman 4 for the 2021 New York mayoral campaign. I always supported you, told Manzarov in a text to Mayor Eric Adams. In return, the indictment alleges that Adam Stafford assisted Manzarov in solving permitting problems involving his Brooklyn real estate and boosting the profile of his Uzbek community charity, the Silk Road Foundation, which he founded in 2023. Manzarov told ICIJ that he was unable to comment on the investigation into Mayor Eric Adams. The indictment alleges that behind the scenes, Manzarov sought Adams' assistance in dealing with the city bureaucracy over a site in Crown Heights, which Global Industries had purchased for development for $8 million in 2020. In particular, Manzarov allegedly asked Adams for help with a 2023 stop work order for the site, 408 Lefferts Avenue, from the city's building department. I always supported you, Manzarov texted Adams in February that year. Having a hard time with DOB, Department of Buildings, we've reached a certain limit that only you can lift. A week and a half later, the indictment says Manzarov texted Adams to thank him, saying the DOB issue had been partially resolved. The New York City Buildings Department told ICIJ that the stop work order had first been partially lifted after required technical reports had been filed and specific technical personnel were found present on site. The department declined to comment on whether Mayor Adams had contacted officials there about Manzarov's problems. The indictment alleges Manzarov asked Adams and his team Adams and his team for assistance in arranging events celebrating the Uzbek national heritage with city sponsorship after the 2021 mayoral election, the New York mayoral election. Media reports show Adams hosted or attended 4 events promoting the Silk Road Foundation in 2023 and 2024, a Brooklyn-based community group serving Central Asians, where he endorsed Manzarov as my brother and the leader. At one event, Adams even cast himself as the first Uzbek mayor of New York. At an Uzbek independence celebration of the city's iconic Bowling Green Park in 2023, Adams declared New York the Tashkent of America. Adams denies the charges laid out in the Justice Department's indictment and has remained in office. His attorney did not return ICIJ's request for comment. Who I am is not in the headlines. It's my history, Adams said on February 11th. As I said from the court, as I said from the onset, I never broke the law and I never would. Commenting on the Justice Department's decision to drop the case, Adams' attorney Alex Spurs said, as I said from the outset, the mayor is innocent and he will prevail. Today he has. Rather long, but what do you think there, Marlon? That's troubling.
Yeah, it's like I said, New York City is Mayor Bloomberg said this years ago. He said New York City is a luxury product, And I think in saying that, he was alluding to what I said, A lot of foreign investors use New York City luxury buildings, luxury development as a investment vehicle. And, what Mansurov did is, in a lot of ways, how they operate in those countries, in countries like Turkey or a lot of those foreign countries, in the East, they get things done by greasing the wheels. In the West, that's illegal. We don't do that over here. But in a lot of those countries, a lot of those countries aren't first world countries. A lot of those countries are still the global South, and still the global South is a term meaning developing countries. And a lot of them have corrupt officials, and the way you get stuff built and get business done is by greasing the wheels a little bit. So what Mansurov is doing is what he's accustomed to doing in his country. But Adams taking it, of course, is illegal. And Adams himself is, he's also repeated a lot of he's also talked a lot about getting rid of regulations in government. And now that we're seeing this, you can see why he wants that, But instead, I would say that a smarter move would have been for him to keep pressing the removal of a lot of these unnecessary bureaucracy, But instead of doing that, he essentially greases the wheel himself, So it goes back to real estate being such a huge part of how this city works, that all this corruption eventually dips. It passes through real estate in some form or another. If not directly here, it's indirectly, But it's a problem, and we need to clear it up so that New York City functions more efficiently.
I would say this, especially regarding today's entire show we're having here. We've now learned that, number one, we know for sure the Justice Department has no merits, no grounds, no merits to dismiss Eric Adams' case. Eric Adams' case unequivocally has more. It has, the Turkish airline upgrade line is a joke. It's just a low information hook line. The prosecution started in 2017 under President Trump, not 2023 or 4 or whatever, when he mentioned this, the shelters, Biden is doing this to me, because he was looking for money. We also know that Eric Adams his case will continue to be dragged on, because the judge has now issued that there's going to be what's called a solicitor, kind of like a special prosecutor, to argue the case of the prosecution or try to be the middleman, which is there, right? And I guess we're trying to bring integrity back into this entire case. We then further find out that Eric Adams and his chief of detectives stupidly and illegally basically discussed matters of discovery in Luigi Mangione's case on a documentary on HBO, where the defense doesn't even have it. That's grounds for a dismissal of the case or a change of venue, whichever comes first. We also learned that definitively Eric Adams has no security clearance, and we can confirm to you that we've said that so do his deputies underneath them, the former police commissioner. New York City has been run with their top officials having no security clearance, and Kathy Hochul never stepped in and thinks that's fine, and only now wants to say something because she's afraid that the political winds are sailing on her. And then finally, the real estate racket that's controlling New York City for so many years. It has a lot of foreign ties, whether it's from the Asian community, from China, now you heard this article we just read, from Uzbekistan, from Turkey, from Russia. By the way, Boris Epstein, I don't know if might have ties to these people as well. He's from that community. So just to throw it out there, I'm not saying that's 100% a fact, but it's funny how his name and involvement has slowly showed up here with Emo Bove, and Steve Bannon is involved. And again, these people from the same communities, Brooklyn, Crown Heights, Park Slope. You heard all these different things going on. So we are breaking this all down. Marlon is giving you a little bit of his theory on this, and this is going to continue. So we're going to end on this note for this episode, and we're going to continue on the following episode with part 2 of this, and we're going to tie in the police department and all these investigations that happen and currently investigation. And, like I said, with this case too, with the Who case in Brooklyn, Eastern District of New York, we have now, I could tell you The sources are telling me the Trump Justice Department trying to kill that case, which would be, this guy already should just stay away from Eric Adams' first case. This one might compound that. So that is the rumor. I hope it's not. I hope they back away. I hope this is just a rumor, but the source is usually good with this. So with that being said, I'm going to end it on that. Tune in for the next episode where me and Marlon will present part 2 of this and continue with this entire unbelievable saga that involves so many people. My head is spinning. So I'll see you guys on the next episode. Me and Marlon will be talking a lot more about this. So have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you on Wednesday.